Alright, it's Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. Still getting used to putting that 22 on the end of the year. Let's see what we got. It's a good song, but I don't really have anything to say about it at the moment. That one,
We had the rash of firings
that's
in
an
the
interesting
NFL,
video.
and while the most
That one,
surprising might go to Brian
next, 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 next. It's a lot of that song, but I want to hear it. Okay, I'll interrupt it and then I'll bring it back so I don't get sued.
38 years ago today, 1984, Grammy Awards being held. This lady up for five of them. That's amazing.
All right, so I'll talk about it. We've got Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper. Cindy's an interesting name. Cynthia, the goddess of the moon, in some lesser known Greek myths. And Cindy. I think Cindy, like Carl, is one of those names that everybody knows, but they might not necessarily know a person of that name, but everybody's heard that name, right? So we had Cindy Crawford. She was very famous for a while, but she didn't make it to the point where people would just say Cindy and you knew who you were talking about. And that was Cyndi Lauper, spelled differently. I don't really understand why there's so many different ways to spell Cindy, but there are. One of my favorite YouTubers is Sydney Black, S-Y-D-N-E, Sydney Black. Anyway, so that was Cyndi Lauper. She was singing Time After Time. And they were talking about the Grammys when she was nominated for 5 Grammys. At the very same time, Madonna was famous. They both were famous. They both had hit songs. And they both had this little girl affect to their voice. And in my way of thinking, Cyndi Lauper was dressing very colorfully, very crazy dressing for the 80s. You know, everybody had big hair, so big hair wasn't really seen as crazy, but she was wearing crazy colors in her hair, so ooh, she's dressing crazy, right? And Madonna was known for the way she dressed and looked as well. But everybody thought that Cyndi Lauper was the serious musician. Maybe, I don't know, taken seriously. Like, yes, her persona was fun. Girls just want to have fun. But she was thought to be more substantive than Madonna. And Madonna was thought to be more pop. And now, decades later, they still have those pop images and they still are well known, but Madonna has shot to the top and Cyndi Lauper has not. A few months ago, a song came on the radio and somebody thought it was Cyndi Lauper, but it was Madonna, or the other way around. And I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, for a moment in time they sounded exactly the same. But most of the time they didn't. But for a moment in time they sounded exactly the same. For a moment in time they dressed similarly. But because it was the 80s and a lot of people were dressing like that, people were following those trends, they weren't seen as twins, and they both went off in their separate directions and became what they are. So Cyndi Lauper is advertising for things elderly people buy. I forget forget which things. Arthritis medicine, I think. And Madonna is having butt implants and haunting social media and award shows. So Cyndi Lauper and Madonna for a moment in time sounded exactly alike, but I didn't realize it until decades later. Similarly, Tom Jones and Barry White. Certain points of their songs, they sound exactly the same. They've got two different images, right? But certain times they sound exactly the same. So, but of course nobody noticed at the time. You just have to listen to it now. I think it's interesting how much of our perception is based on the moment versus looking back. Sometimes I'll watch an old movie and there'll be someone who is supposed to be playing the ugly girl, but she's not ugly to me. Or there's someone who's supposed to be playing the pretty girl and she's not pretty to me. And I'm thinking, well, it's not just that everybody has different opinions and people's opinions change. It's that the overall view in culture and society has changed. Like at the time, that look was considered ugly and now it's not. Or that look was considered beautiful and now it's not. So one problem I have that everyone has is judging people by how they look. But my twist on it is I'm so annoyed when everybody thinks a girl's pretty, but all it is she's skinny. That annoys me so much. And I know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder to some degree. I know there's room for different standards of beauty. And for some people, the weight of a person is just a huge factor in how they look. But when a girl is not pretty, but she's skinny, and everybody acts like she is pretty, I'm like mad that they don't see the truth, which is she's not pretty, because, you know, that's what I feel, so that's the truth, right? And I'm mad at myself for caring about it, because why do I care if somebody's getting extra credit for being pretty? Why would I want to talk them out of it? The poor girl, good for her if somebody thinks she's pretty, right? Like, what's wrong with that? If somebody thinks you're pretty or handsome, or you have a good voice, or you are nice or whatever, hey, great. We all don't have to agree. But why should I be mad if somebody's getting extra credit for something? And it's kind of how I feel about Cyndi Lauper. She did not fulfill my expectations for her. Madonna went far and above my expectations for her. They both are very successful compared to me and the people I know, right? So why should I be mad that Cyndi Lauper didn't have the career I think she could have had? And maybe she didn't take advantage of every opportunity like Madonna did with her chameleon-like skills, her willingness to just try anything and see if it worked. They're both talented, interesting people. I'm sure some people like their music more than others. But for one moment in time, they sounded the same, and we would not have known where their careers would have gone just from looking at things in that moment in time. It happened to be an important moment in time for me just because of the age that I was, the formative years that represents for me. And now that I can see what was the 80s as opposed to living in it and realizing, oh, hair doesn't have to be that big, does it? Anyway, so it's January 2022 still, even though I've been talking for 10 minutes. And they say 10 minutes is about the length of time that most videos should be. There's so many videos. Everything's recorded now, supposedly, but who has time to listen to it all? Who is gonna care? 10 years from now, I'm gonna care what my opinion was about my opinion of something that happened 30 years from before today? Yeah, maybe. All right. Take care.